Sure.
Okay, good morning, everyone. We have with us today the SOM Chair, Undersecretary Laura Del Rosario. Um, the Undersecretary will not have an opening statement.
Yeah, I'll go straight to the briefing.
Yeah, she will.
Yeah.
The floor is now open for your questions. For
Oh, no,
those,
no, I'll go. I'll give a briefing, not a statement.
okay,
Okay? So that at
she will
least
have
they
a
know what's
short
happening.
remarks.
Yeah. Oh, it might be a long one. Okay.
Okay.
Is it okay? Okay. Do I sit here? Tayo na iha.
Ah, okay.
Kasi maliit ako eh. So that they'll see me. All right. Thank you very much. I just want to give you the context of what we do. I'm sure that if I tell you all the little meetings that we're doing here, you might say, how do they fit into the big picture? By the end of this week, we will have held 87 meetings. Okay, it's that big. And in the past few days, we've been having an average of 17 meetings a day. You can ask the conference management services to verify this. But during the last few days now, we're just having an average of 5 to 6. Why is it so? Because the working group meetings have started to end, and these 17 meetings per day actually involve around 30 working groups together with the symposia, the seminars, the conferences. Then all of this will fold into the senior officials meeting, and that is where we come in. All of this will be reporting to us, so to speak. Now, if I give you everything that each working group has been doing, it will just confuse you because you have to see the puzzle as a whole, because right now what we're doing are small pieces of the puzzle. So I'll give you how the puzzle will look like, all right? I think that's easier. Everything that we do, of course, is basically for the average person, for the average citizen. And I think this will go into what we call the quality of growth of each economy. And the quality of growth will depend on three features. One is it should be it should revolve around institution building. Second, it should revolve around social cohesion or social equity. And the third, it should revolve around its environmental impact. Now, the reason why we're taking this is that in the past, when we would always talk about liberalization of trade and services, trade, ease of doing business, people will always say, isn't that giving other people an advantage over others? So people always see it as a competition thing. And of course, they are right in that sense. But at the same time, too, I also see it as, isn't it also an opportunity for us to improve the quality of our education? And I think people have always seen me as an advocate for improved, expanded, and innovative education, because education is what will carry us forward. If we stay where we are right now, we will not be able to compete. So no matter what people say that K to 12 should not yet be implemented because we have no classrooms yet, or we don't have enough classrooms, I think we should look at, let us implement K to 12 as soon as possible, and let us build the classrooms as soon as possible, meaning instead of pulling back, we should push forward for all the government agencies to do what they should do so that we'll have K to 12. Now, I'm using this as a start of point because if we have to build institutions are, the things that run government or the things that run society. Institutions are schools. They're also government agencies that do regulations, like customs, immigration. Those are institutions. Trade and industry agencies. That's an institution. Foreign affairs is an institution. Defense is an institution. We cannot build these institutions without building the quality of our education, and of course without building the quality of our transparency and governance. We know very well that when there is no governance, institutions are weak. We can see that in our economic system and our political system. So we are therefore talking of everything that affects us. And then, of course, when we talk about social equity, we talk about social cohesion, because we cannot move as a community or as a nation if others are left behind. And again, education comes there. So as much as possible, we want all of us to be properly prepared. But that doesn't mean that everything is solved through education. There are other means also of doing that. We have to think in terms, of course, of how do we care for the disabled? How do we care for those who have certain challenges in their lives? And how do you care about, let's say, people who might want to pursue a dream but they don't have the means to do that? So when we talk about social equity and social cohesion, we are also talking about social safety nets, for instance. We're talking about access, basically, what access do we do? For the disabled, for instance, in the ministers' meeting for transportation, they will talk about the access of the disabled in our transportation system. I'm sure you know very well that if you are on a wheelchair, you cannot board a bus. Why can't we have buses where the disabled can roll in their wheelchairs? Why can't we not have buses where a person in crutches can easily go up? And I think we have those technology around us. And of course, we're also talking at some point already of what we have to do with diseases. We are talking of health and how the health supply chain will assist us, and how the practices on health are somehow according to the standards that we want them to be, so that at least when we have this, what we call these epidemics and pandemics, they don't become such an overwhelming challenge for us. We know that these things do affect the quality of our economic growth, and therefore we know that this will affect also in many ways the way we can, address poverty, so to speak. And then, of course, the environmental impact is again part of the things that we do, that we want to do in APEC. We are talking about quality infrastructure. For us, we have what we call building back better in the case of the Typhoon Haiyan, Typhoon Yolanda. But in our case, we are going beyond building back better, but we are also looking at quality infrastructure, so that from now on, all buildings should be built according to the specifications that will somehow withstand tsunamis, earthquakes. And we're also looking, therefore, at improving existing buildings, retrofitting them, improving them. And then, of course, all of this will go into the problem of funding. And so we have the finance minister's process that will meet, I think, on Monday, is it? And maybe you can ask questions on what the finance minister's process are discussing. But definitely the finance ministers are going to talk about investment in infrastructure, and of course investment in education, and all the things that we do. Now, what is very exciting about what was held here in Cebu is the fact that we tried now to focus on the average citizen. So we had a city mayors forum held here where we invited more than 20 mayors, and they discussed the challenges that affects a local city executive. And of course, these are part of the things that we do in APEC. We talked about waste, treatment of waste, conversion of waste into something good. Like there was a presentation on how waste that's recovered from the oceans can be converted into something else. We also discuss about the best ways of making sure that our water pollution is addressed properly, because sometimes we are not aware of it. Like for instance, you might be living beside a gasoline station. Perhaps the gasoline, the liquid is flowing down somewhere in the water table, and some of these elements can be carcinogenic. So we're talking about that. When we talk about infrastructure in APEC, it's not just about roads and buildings. We are talking about infrastructure that you do not see. You do not see where the sewage goes. You do not see the sewerage underneath your land. And do you see where all the effluents of what we use, whether it's detergent or makeup, what it does to the soil quality, or to what it does to the water quality under our soil that becomes later on our drinking water. And therefore, we're talking about the, the, the differentiation of water, that we should have different water for drinking, different water for cleaning, different water for industrial production, different water for agriculture, so that water doesn't become too expensive if we differentiate the processing of water that way. And the city mayors also talk about culture and education and how it can improve the quality of life, in a city, and how a city can become better also if we have more green spaces, if we have public spaces, and how a city can become better if it becomes more accessible to transportation, or commuting will become easier. I think all of us have become what we call subject to traffic jams. And once I asked somebody who would commute perhaps from one point to another on how many hours he spends on the road commuting, and we computed it. And if that person is 60 years old, he will have spent an average of 5 years of his life if you put all the commuting time together on the on commute on what do you, in commuting. Can you imagine that? 5 years of your life, if you add all the hours in commuting, will add up to 5 years of your life. When we can do something more productive during those time. Thank God, of course, that there's technology, that even if we are stuck in traffic, we can do our emails, we can do our text messaging. And therefore, technology is also an issue that we are discussing in APEC, and how it should be able to assist us in our, in our economic lives. So we're talking about access to technology for SMEs, small and medium enterprises, and how access also to managerial competence, and how we can train small and medium enterprises can become better managers of their business, so that when they scale up, when they can expand their operations because of a bigger market through the internet economy or through e-commerce, they're also ready for that. And so, under the senior officials, we had a public-private dialogue on water. Precisely, I'm going back to water now, on the environmental issues, precisely because we think that water will become a big problem, especially since all cities are growing, and people say that we have hit how many billion now, and they say that in the future, all economies will be 60% urban versus 40% rural. So cities will become mega cities, and it will bring a challenge to the city executives. And we are looking at that in APEC too. Now, I'm always bringing it down to the level of the citizen, because some people think that what we do in APEC only belongs to the national government. So we also had a Friends of the Chair on urbanization. The Friends of the Chair is made up actually of the chair of the senior officials, which is the Philippines. And then we gather everybody who are interested, and these are almost all my colleagues also who are senior officials. And we discussed how we can move forward on the problems of urbanization, how we can make cities sustainable and livable, and how we can somehow integrate also appropriate measures and appropriate approaches to environmental sustainability and inclusive growth. Now, there is also something that I would like you also to, to be aware of, is that as we do this, we're also doing some measures on anti-corruption and we're working about the corruption, anti-corruption, and also we're working also on energy efficiency and conservation. We're also working on measures on illegal logging and trade, and all of this, of course, will affect small communities. So when we meet as senior officials, we will be taking all of this, and then, and the big picture, of course, is the issue of connectivity. Our economies will be connected whether we want it or not. Some people, in fact, are saying how open should we be. We are faced now with the realization or the reality that the internet economy is here, that the digital economy is here. So how can you close an economy when your telecommunications is already opening up the world before your eyes, before your iPhone, before your computer? So if I were a small business person, or if I were in education, if I were to think of the quality of growth of my citizens as a local city mayor or as a national leader, I will look at the internet also and how I can harness it so that the quality of growth in my country will become better than it is now. In short, our challenges now belong to the 21st century. We cannot look anymore at the issues of the 20th and not move forward. We hope that what we're doing in APEC will really be building blocks towards finding solutions to what we face in the 21st century. Thank you very much. So I'm open to Q&A now. I'm sorry I have no statement. I hope you taped my presentation. I think you know me by now. I don't read statements because I have poor eyesight. And also because I talk better when I think as I talk along. All right? Thank you very much.
Thank you. For those who wish to ask questions, kindly raise your hand and wait to be recognized before approaching the mic. Please introduce yourself and the media entity that you're representing. May I also remind everyone to avoid non-APEC related questions and to ask all questions now during the press briefing. Thank you. Any questions?
I suppose everything is clear now if you have no questions.
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Oh, sir.
Good morning. I'm Vic Serna of GMA7. For clarification regarding those meeting about
what?
more than 20 mayors,
Yes.
may I ask a specification about this, ma'am? Are
Oh.
they okay?
Yes. Okay. They were given criteria of what makes a good city based on, on surveys all over the world. And there was a study done that most of the things that people look for when you want to look at a livable city, you're looking at, for instance, safety and security. That's one. Garbage collection and quality of the environment is one. Water pollution, air pollution. Some people are looking at leisure. In fact, there are some cities now that are planning cities according to leisure or events, meaning especially the young ones now, they want to go to places where they can hang out. This is a different group altogether because they have more disposable income. So they're really building cities that can house many restaurants. I'm sure Cebu has that already. And then they're looking also at the cultural life so that we don't only look at places where there is leisure but culture, museums, educational hubs, universities. And then, of course, they're looking at the transportation system, whether the transportation system is sustainable. that it should not be emitting and too much, pollution, that it should also contribute, it should not detract from the quality of life. And I think they also talk about um, recovery of water, especially in cities where there are rivers and streams. Korea has a very good example of this, of a polluted river that they clean up, and then and then when it was cleaned, they build al fresco restaurants and cafes nearby, so that as you dine, you can see the fish, swimming along the stream. So there were best practices that were shared, and I think because of the success of the meeting yesterday, they're planning to hold another one every other year, maybe, to be supported by the same group who will be working on livable cities. Now, this project was done in partnership with us as chair of the senior officers and the APEC Business Advisory Council. The APEC Business Advisory Council, or ABAC, is an institution within APEC. We're talking about institution building. And they represent the entrepreneurs, those who have the wherewithal and the resources to help governments do certain things. And they're also the ones that affect our quality of life, because when they build factories that are polluting, or when they build buildings that are not safe, they affect the average person. So we are lucky to have had a very good, we've had very good people in our ABAC group. And these are, of course, people are involved in building infrastructure, communities, and businesses. We have Mr. Tony Tan Kaktiong of Jollibee. We have Mr. Jaime Augusto Sabel de Ayala of the Ayala Properties and the Ayala Corporation. And we have, of course, Ms. Doris Magsaysay Ho of the Magsaysay Group of Companies, and they do shipping and they do training, of course, in hospitality services and management. And they would like to help us in government to help build a better city, especially for us who come from Metro Manila. We're made up of 17 contiguous municipalities and cities. It is a big challenge really for us to see how we can have, better quality of life, since one city flows into another. And, in the survey, people also ask for more public spaces and parks, green areas where they can converge and where families can gather together. So all of these were discussed, and they were also looking at what we call the public-private partnership in city building, because sometimes you might need a private sector partner as you improve the quality of your water, as you improve perhaps the quality of your parks and public spaces. Okay, so expect round 2 on this meeting, which happened in Cebu, and we're very happy that the governor and the mayor of Cebu and the movers and shakers of Cebu were very much behind this endeavor. Okay.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Good morning, USEC. I'm Jindy from Sunstar Cebu.
Yeah.
I would just like to mention that you were quoted in previous news reports about the kanang increase in hotel rates during the APEC summit. Were you able to get better rates during this event, and any feedback from the delegates about the hotel rates and their Cebu experience?
I think the respective responsible people really took up the issue with the hotels. But then, of course, there are some hotels which really gave very friendly rates. So they were able to attract also a lot of delegates to stay with them. So as a whole, it's as though if you it's as though we were given a choice now of the possible hotels where we could stay in. Yeah.
But when the issue was raised, Madam, were there adjustments on the parts of the hotels?
I wasn't given a feedback on that. I'm sorry. But I know that in my case, I looked for the best rate that I could have. And I'm very happy with it. And maybe because I complained, I was upgraded. So I did. It was not an intended consequence, of course. I did not want to be upgraded. It's just that I'm very grateful that my hotel upgraded me. But it was the one that I thought was the best rate, considering the quality and considering the trends. You know how they should be handled. I mean, I'm looking at the trends. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Can we know if what hotel, not necessarily mentioned the name of the hotel, but in terms of its star ratings, is it 5?
It's
4?
very good enough, but it's not one of those that I criticized.
What hotel, Madam? 2-star, 3-star, 4-star?
I think it's 4.
But most of the delegates, Madam, where do they prefer to stay?
4 and 3.
4 and 3.
Except those who have to stay in the expensive hotels, but they did twin sharing, or in some cases triple sharing, because that's the only way you'll be able to break down the cost. So we're in APEC, we're very creative at looking for solutions, and we're very used to economics. So when we discuss pricing and everything, we're looking at the trends, we're comparing trends. So some people might think that I made an unfair remark, but people really were looking at comparisons between countries. Okay? Thank you.
Yes, please.
Good morning, Undersecretary. I'm King Perez of TV5. Undersecretary, you mentioned in your statement a while ago that in order to have our institutions to work properly, there should be quality of education.
Yeah.
Undersecretary, what are the salient points during the discussions regarding education in the senior officials meeting, and can you kindly expound
Okay.
on it?
One of the issues that have been in our what we call agenda when it comes to quality education are the following. One, when we talk about human resources and human resources development, we're also looking at companies. Sometimes they say that they cannot find the workers that they need. And of course, for some of our universities, they might think, okay, what are these skills that you want? And for some, maybe they might be technical skills. And of course, technical skills, as I have mentioned in my lectures to universities, are changing because the technology is changing. So if you compare a car mechanic of 20 years ago, the training of the new car mechanic now is different because many of the cars are now computer-based, isn't it? And so we're into that, how we can skill up technical education. But at the heart of all of this is the issue of innovation and skillful thinking. Because the economy changes so much, we need people who are nimble enough to move from one problem to another and address that. Because if I may use a very concrete example, whenever I talk about technological changes, I ask people in my lecture, what cell phone did you use 7 years ago? What cell phone are you using now? What happened to your first cell phone? Where is it now? Do you see my point? So the technology has changed, even in education. Therefore, I was talking to somebody who was trying to tell me that even the process of technology of education, process of teaching methodology is different. He said, These days, he said, you cannot ask young people like you to read Tolstoy. Can you read Tolstoy? 500, 600 pages long. I'm sure after one chapter you'll be bored, right? Because you're very visual and maybe want things moving quickly. In our case, we were taught to think and debate with the author. So when I read a book, I debate with the author. I would say, are you sure? Is this true? How can I verify this? And then I read another author who might have an opposing views. You are not trained like us. But does that mean you are less intelligent than we are? But can you connect dots the way we can connect dots? Can you connect ideas the way we could? Because we had books to compare authors with, to compare ideas with. Do you compare ideas? So that's what I'm trying to say. Education should be able to compare ideas, technology, so that when a problem comes, we can say, we can solve it through this means, through this theory, and we don't just become consumers of what is being given to us in the internet. So innovation is something that we are trying to grapple with, and of course this is something for for educators to do now. And of course business is into innovation already. As I said, what cell phone were you doing using a few years ago? Even all the things that you do now. Do you still have a computer at home? Do you need one? What do you use? I don't have a computer, but can I do the internet? I do. Where? My phone. See? That's technology.
Another question, Undersecretary. I'm doing a local story on protest actions regarding the APEC senior officials meeting here in Cebu.
Yeah.
I would like to know if are there particular protocols or orders prohibiting protest actions?
No. You can protest as long as you don't invade our meeting rooms. You do your protest outside our perimeter so that we can conduct our business in, quietly. But I would like to suggest also, before people protest, they should study what we are discussing. When I read the reasons for the protest, I said, aren't they protesting against something that they thought are happening which are not really not happening? Some of the issues that they're raising, they are not our issues. Or we have gone beyond those issues, or we have addressed those issues. Verify with us before you protest. Maybe para bang naunahan na kayo, you're already overtaken by events and you're still protesting. That's just my comment. Do not generalize. Because sometimes some of the messages of protests are not current anymore with what we do. Look at what I have discussed with you. Were the issues that I discussed with you now subjects of the protest? You compare those. Through our discussions, did we address the concerns of the protest? Or did we address the concerns of the protest? Or aren't they protesting against something which is not really happening with us? You see, I'm looking at the relevance of the protests. I'm not preventing you from protesting. This is a democratic country. Remember, I protested against hotel rates myself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, please.
You raised earlier, Yusek, that there were issues raised on internet connectivity as we are already in this digital era. With this APEC summit held in Cebu, and we know that the Philippines has one of the slowest and most expensive internet rates in the world, or in Southeast Asia maybe, will this APEC summit lead the way for private sectors in other countries to invest in the Philippines in terms of internet connectivity?
Okay, it's not a matter of will they invest in internet connectivity. What we're trying to say is that it will somehow remind all governments that internet connection is very important, and that the speed of the internet is really, really necessary for us to move forward. I believe that there are many of our Filipino investors, entrepreneurs who can do their own investments in internet connectivity. We are just making sure that in discussing these issues, the internet connections and connectivity will be a priority for our government planning. Uh, Therefore, this will be part of the things that we will be, we're looking at in the telecommunications sector, for instance. By the way, the telecommunications sector is part of the working groups of APEC, and definitely we're looking also at the issues of security, because remember, internet is not just being open, it's also about security, of cyberspace. We do take things side by side. As we open, we also look at the security aspects. Yes, I hope that our own people who are involved, who have enough, as I said, resources, will look at how we can expand, improve the broadband that we have, and how we can have perhaps more access to the internet. I'm glad you asked that question, because it's one of my favorite topics too. Because you know why? It impacts on education. I'm always going back to education. If you have a very good internet connection, you can educate more people. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Good morning, USEC. I'm Vanessa from Cebu Daily News. I would just like to ask if we have any policies or agreements that are being hashed out or have been hashed out in SOM 3 in preparation for endorsement to the ministers.
Not agreements per se, because we are not a negotiating body. We are not the World Trade Organization. We are a forum. We are discussing, in fact, what I briefed you upon, what I briefed you on earlier, is that we are pushing for what we call the dimensions of growth. Because in the past, we were always talking about innovation and growth, innovative growth, balanced growth, and all that. What we're pushing for is that we should have a strategy so that we can have a framework that will really consider the environment as a basic consideration, especially in this age of climate change. We're also looking at a basic strategy on how we do business so that there will be social equity. We bring in those are, as I said, disadvantaged in life. And of course, I'm always pushing for building of individuals and building of institutions through governance, through better education. So in other words, everything that I said, that's the one we're pushing for. And we're just preparing the groundwork for the leaders to adapt by November in Manila.
On another note, USEC, would you recommend Cebu as a destination for meetings or MICEs?
Yes, as long as the rates are reasonable.
Thank you, USEC.
It's not just Cebu. It's everywhere. Please don't think I'm picking on Cebu. I think every city will realize that they have to be competitive. I think this is something that Thailand has discovered. You can get a very good 4-star hotel for $80. And then you go in another city, it costs $120. In another city, it costs $150. So you look at this, but then of course, I hope it will also encourage investments, in tourism, especially in new places of destination, where, people now want to go where it's different, right? If you ask a seasoned traveler, they don't go from one city to city, because sometimes all cities look alike. They want to go to different places that look different. The difference, you should have a different brand. That's what I'm trying to say.
Hi, good morning, USEC. I'm Jean Demasilio of the Freeman. I would just like to know, for a small community, when can we possibly feel the impact of APEC meetings?
You want is a long-term process. A meeting will not produce results overnight. I just want you to know this. In 1996, when we hosted APEC for the first time, we passed for an agreement. We worked that all APEC economies will support an agreement called the Information Technology Agreement. 1996. How old were you then? That ITA now, because of that agreement, is what makes you now enjoy your iPhones. Remember, this is IT, information technology. If we did not push for that, the developed countries would not have readily shared their technology in information. But we pushed and said, let's agree, let's open up our market. That, how long did it take you to enjoy the ITA? Maybe by 2005? It took 5 to 10 years. So don't worry, by the time you're 40, I hope that you will see Cebu as a better city, that my own Metro Manila is a better city. You know, and that those who are disabled have better access to education, to moving around, to to job opportunities. Okay.
Okay. Oh, yes, ma'am, please.
Good morning, USEC. I'm Gloria Cañete of Radyo ng Bayan. You mentioned earlier about the MSMEs, and you said that to scale their operations, scale up the operations.
If they want to.
Yeah, if they want to. So it would be using e-commerce and the latest technologies. So what are the other supports being given by the APEC, especially when it comes to expanding their operations, ma'am?
Under the finance minister's process, I have to explain this. There are two processes in APEC. We have what we call the Trade and Industry and Foreign Affairs process, that's us. And then we have the finance ministers. We work in tandem because the SMEs, or the MSME, is under the senior officials process, us. But the financing of MSME is under the finance minister's process. If you read the Boracay Action Agenda, which was passed in Boracay, and if you look at the Cebu Action Plan, which will come out of the finance minister's process in a couple of days, you will see that they're supporting each other in the MSMEs. So we are looking at this as a means, because it's not just access to technology that we're looking at. We're also looking at access to finance, because without the finance, SMEs will find it difficult. But there's something that people are not aware of. Under our own national laws, there's already a provision for banks to provide special loans for MSMEs. And maybe some people are not aware of that. But so our action in APEC now is to focus on this. And of course, people are already working on microfinancing. That's been there for quite some time, isn't it? There are entities I know whom we have met. Every time we have an SME summit, they're talking about microloans that will help MSMEs. Now, technology also, the government is trying, especially TESDA and the Department of Trade and Industry, they're trying to help SMEs scale up and do their own packaging. DOST, in fact, has a very good program on helping improve the products of SMEs. And every year they have what they call a science fair. Unfortunately, it's in Manila. I don't know if they hold it in the provinces, whether it's a traveling fair or a traveling exhibit. And I could see there what DOST has done on snacks alone, on food products that SMEs are selling. Okay, that's on the local government. The other governments perhaps are doing likewise, or they're doing more because they have the technology to improve things in terms of food production. I'm talking of food production. here.
Okay, another question, please. In terms of inclusive growth, Madam Undersecretary, what are the sectors being prioritized by APEC, and how is APEC helping them improve their growth, inclusive growth of these economies?
When we talk of inclusive growth, we're not talking in terms of sectors. We're talking in terms of strategies. One of the strategies that we're pushing, as I have said, is education. Because you cannot really achieve, what do you call that, as much growth as you have, unless you go into training and education. And TESDA and CHED and the DepEd have their own initiatives already there. And then, again, we're looking at connectivity. We already mentioned the internet. As I said, I'm excited, I said, about internet connectivity, because internet promotes inclusion, you know. Whether you cannot get out of the house, you can still educate yourself. Unlike in the past, when you cannot get out of yourself, you remain undereducated. Now you can get lectures on the internet. So connectivity is one of them. Education is one. And then we're also looking at reforms. Can we change regulations so that some regulations might be too restrictive? You know, if you can make them a little bit easier for other people, you know, to follow, without, of course, creating abuses in the system. You know, regulations are there to prevent abuses, but sometimes they might become so
Restricted.
so rigid, right, that you cannot innovate. We're looking at that through the structural reform ministerial meeting.
Thank you, Madam.
Yeah. Which will be held in Cebu
Thank-
also.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, thank you. If you notice, tahi-tahi ang mga issues, ha? If you follow the structural reform ministerial meeting, it will go into regulations that will promote inclusive growth. It's all there. After all, the economy is just one. It's just that we're looking at the different ingredients that will, you know, affect, that impact on an economic, you know, on an economic system.
Good morning, Madam. I'm Jeneline Ko from Bombo Radio. My question is about the quality education, because talking about the improving our economic, like for the education, the K-12 program is a good idea, and I hope this is not again an experiment like bridging 7 to 6 years ago. But how do we consider also the burden of the less fortunate people? What program are we preparing aside from scholarship, because there are more out of school than the scholarship that we have offered? And do you think this program would not increase the unemployment rate after implementing K-12, because the students will be more competitive, so we can now kanang compare, so these students are more like
repeat that question. Will it promote joblessness because why?
because there are you can now identify the students, the knowledge that they have, like this is more industrious, and these people or these students are just, their knowledge is just limited.
How will it be limited? It's already K to
Like,
12.
For example, like now we have an ordinary class like that one. So we can have the students like they are from top 1 to 10, so those who have less knowledge. So
But
by
K
the
to-
by
okay.
the K to 12, the students are more creative.
Isn't that good?
Yeah, that's good. But how about those students that's not able to, you know, reach those
Levels?
yes. So
Okay, what do you mean? You mean if there's K to 10, everybody will finish grade 10?
ano, like for example, pag mahuman nila ang kanang K to 12, if they would able to finish the K to 12 program, so the students, there are some students who are very competitive,
Yeah.
but there are some also that they are less competitive
Yeah.
to others. So how about the jobs for them? So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, in other words, you think that K to 10 is the better solution? So that nobody is competitive? That everybody stops at K to 10? Is that your proposition?
I know. I'm just asking, Madam, because there are a lot of parents who are also questioning about this program because after the implementation of the K to 12 maybe, so
Ayaw
those-
nilang maiwan yung mga anak nila, so
Yeah,
to
like,
speak. Okay.
yeah,
In other words, what you're saying, if everybody stops at 10, hindi maiiwan ng anak ko. Kasi hanggang 10, hanggang 7 lang siya. Kung K to 12, ang anak ko hanggang grade 7 lang, ang layo-layo niya sa K to 12, di ba? The question is, should we stop those who can do K to 12 from going to K to 12 just because there are those who cannot do it? It's as though we are being guided by the least, as we call it, the least common denominator. I think we should stop our thinking there. We should say, instead of preventing people, you call this is the crab mentality ng Pilipino, di ba? Ayaw nating umakyat yung iba, kaya binababa natin. Sa halip, bakit di tayo umakyat? Tulungan nating umakyat yung di walang kaya. Huwag nating pigilang umakyat yung gustong umakyat.
Yeah, that's a
For
good
me,
idea.
K to 12 is good. In some economies, like in the US, they already have K to 14. How far do you want us to be from the rest of the world? Instead of preventing others from going up, let's help the others go up. But please don't stop us from going from K to 12. I asked my officers who are here with me, they said, Mom, they said, I want my children to be able to go to K to 12. Me too. My children went through K to 12 in other countries.
Yeah,
See?
okay. That's a good idea, Madam. But for example, like in South Korea, some of the students there committed suicide because of stress. So
Because of the exams, not because of
Yes,
K to
yeah.
12. That's a different
that
story.
it's the way of how you compete, right?
No, it's the competition for university that they commit suicide. It's not the K to 12 program.
Yeah, because
I think, Iha,
yeah,
you're mixing all the issues, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, people commit suicide when they don't pass the national admission test to their favorite university. But I don't think that's a big percentage.
Okay.
Or maybe there's pressure from the family. But you ask Koreans, how well educated are they? What mobile phone are you using?
Lenovo.
How about mobile phone?
Lenovo, ma'am.
Okay, how many grades the producer of Lenovo is produced by a particular country? Ilang years ang education nila?
I don't know.
K to 12. How many of you are using Samsung? Ilang years? That's Korea. Ilang years? 12. You look at all the products, Sony, Ericsson, Motorola, all of those. Ilang years ang education ng nila? K to 12.
Okay, thank you, Madam. But my intentions to ask is, like for example, when you apply for a job, then both of you came from K to 12 program, so this person is more competitive, so the other one will be left behind. So he or she might be
You know,
deprived
Iha,
like that.
the competition has nothing to do with K to 12. It has something to do with the student. Whether there's K to 10 or K to 12, kung competitive ka, competitive ka. Kung tamad ka, di ba? Walang kinalaman yung curriculum. I think you should be glad that more people are being trained. Because if I'm going to show you, you know, what do you call that? If I'm going to show you a film about how data changes, the knowledge that is being generated now is so much more during the past 5 years than during, you know, the knowledge generated in 2 years is more than the knowledge generated during the past 100 years. There's so much data out there that for a person to absorb everything, you really need more than 10 years. Remember, I went through 10 years, no, my generation, I went through 11 years of education, including kindergarten, that's 12. Why? We had grade 7. My generation, I went to schools that had grade 7. And that's why we are better in communication, we're better in understanding issues. We can separate generalities from specifics. You see, that's one skill in education. You're trained to think, not just to memorize and to generalize. So when you say K to 12, it causes, you know, suicide in Korea. No, it's not the K to 12 that's causing suicides. It's the competitive examinations that they want to go to a university. Don't mix the facts. Okay? Otherwise, people will say, kaya pala, ganito baka magsusuicide ng anak ko. Please, I beg you, study the data, study the way you make conclusions. Okay? That's why this proves that we need K to 12.
Okay. So another, ma'am, is about the security. So you're talking about, like, for example, disabled. So how do you care for them? So how about those applicants, ma'am, from others, like they are really unfortunate with the height and kanang,
Okay,
like
as
the-
far
how do
as
we-
I know, our public school system is almost free, isn't it? We have a high school system, which is almost free. In fact, we call it free, and I think the only things that they pay sometimes is 300 pesos a year. And I think we have the CCT, the conditional cash transfer, that's supposed to take care of the, cost of transportation. And then, of course, we have to go into perhaps, if you're looking at the poor having so many children, I understand that. But I think we're also going here into the issue of responsibility of the community. The community also, the institutions, the community groups, the church groups, even the family institution should also learn to be responsible for itself. I think what I'm trying to say here that APEC is not just for the rich, In fact, most of our issues now are really geared towards the individuals who have to compete, in a more and more competitive society. You cannot stop Google from doing what it's doing. You cannot, people are already talking about technology and cars that are so well advanced. Pretty soon, even there are people my age who cannot even operate a computer because when we were being educated, there was no computer. Does that mean that it is the fault of the present society that there's some people who are computer illiterate? No, it is their fault, right? Mag-aral kayo, nandiyan yung opportunity. What we're saying here is this. The program of APEC is to create opportunities for everybody. That's our mission. And people think that we are making things hard for the less fortunate. We are not. We're just making them realize you have no way but to move up because the rest of the world is marching forward and we cannot wait. We have to march along with them. And the best solution really is education. Clear thinking. There should be clarity in what we think. There should be clarity in our conclusions. That to me can only be answered by education. Okay?
Okay. Last question, ma'am.
Good morning, USAC. I'm Irene Sino Cruz from Inquirer Visayas Bureau. May we know how were the mayors identified, those who were invited to the forum for city mayors, and where they came from, and if they share most common concerns?
I'll mention that one by one. No?
Okay.
They had common concerns. That's why I was able to give you all the areas of concern. Yung walo. Okay, next question.
Yes. Have they indicated or committed to adopt the best practices that were discussed during the forum?
You know what? If they have to be elected, if they really have the heart of a servant, they will. Now, if they're just there for the money, they won't.
Okay, thank
But
you.
I think all of those whom we invited, they say they want to build better cities. All of them, without exceptions. And now they said, I know what they're doing. I know what I need to do. Okay. Now, and I think that's a good thing that they will see. You see, our politicians also are afraid of being left behind. Can you imagine if a mayor of one city will say, tingnan mo yung mayor doon, ang ganda ng ginagawa, tapos tayo ganito. Because their own citizens will say, bakit ang mayor dito, tsaka yung town na yun, ang ganda, yung atin, ang pangit. There will be pressure for them to renovate and to innovate. Okay? Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, ma'am.
Sige,
Okay,
one more. One point,
One
sige.
more. Okay, sige. Last. Thank you for being so gracious.
No, it's okay. I can stay with you until you get hungry. I don't mind. Because you know why? I want to erase certain misconceptions. And if you notice, I don't like generalized conclusions. I want your data to be exact. Okay?
Ma'am, good noon. I'm Ria Fernandez from PTV4. You said earlier that APEC aims to make all opportunities or programs available to everybody.
No, not programs of APEC, opportunities in society.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you tackled in your meetings the abolishment of age limit in applying for work?
That's not an issue in APEC. That's a national issue.
Okay, but it wasn't discussed.
That's under the ILO, International Labor Organization, which is under the UN. It governs the legal age for work. We
Alright.
cannot touch that.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Yes, we
So
would like to
have,
thank.
have you been reprimanded enough? Remember, I am a teacher. Okay, so, okay, if you were my students, I'll grade you with B+. Okay, thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Yusek Lula,
Okay.
for taking the time to speak with us this morning.
Yeah.
This concludes the press briefing. Good day,
Yeah.
everyone.
No, B+ is high for me. That's 90%. If you're not happy, all right, be competitive. Okay, no, I wanted to mention this. You know, I was bothered by the fact that some people, they say, how can they compete? This is something that I learned from our Department of Labor, okay? Just listen, this is serious. We found out, at least I found out by talking with a high-ranking official at Department of Labor, some of our overseas workers are a few of our overseas workers are being sent home because their skills are already obsolete. That is serious. That's why we need K-12. Okay, thank you.